Okay guys, welcome back from a break. So this is where we stopped. We have our stuff. This is where our project has reached. um, uh, so if we look at our project, here I'm just going to look in the in yes, in HTML. So this is the card we're trying to actually build. So far what we have the card put in this bluish background. So the first thing you're going to work on is the width. So I'll put this arrow. This arrow is showing you the width. So we want to first make it be that width. So we give it a width of a certain figure so that it is occupying specifically that that space. Okay, so by doing that, we just go to VS Code and to our card. So if I go to VS Code, this is our card actually in the container. So on this card, simply say card, and we capture or we target elements in CSS. If it is a class, we use a dot, and if it is an ID, we use a hash. So a card, I'm just going to give it a width of about 300 pixels. Okay, and you can see the words have been cut, and for visual purposes, I'm just going to give it another background color like of red that we are building when we are seeing it. Okay, that is fine. Okay, so if you look at this, we see that the size is here, right? So one thing that is missing right now, if you go back to here, let's put right away the image. Now there are many ways to put the image into an element, and the first one you can use HTML, and the second one you can use CSS. So sometimes we use CSS if the image is going to be a background, and if you are putting a normal image, you could use HTML. Actually, in this case, you would have used HTML like so. You just say image, and then you provide a source. So the image has a source attribute and the alternative attribute. We said in the source attribute, we put the path where the image is located. For instance, I could put a dot slash images. So this path here is from index. Like you assume you are from this index and going to this one, you simply put images. Even if I don't put this, I would say images, and I would put that inside the images, check in images, and inside the images put a card header. And this alt text is a text that is displayed in case the image cannot be displayed for some reason. So card header image, you could put something like that, and if you check, okay, we have our image. And for some reason, if I misspell anything here, like I add something like a P here, and it doesn't show up, you will see that there is the old text comes here, card header image, right? But today I'm teaching you another trick of connecting it from CSS. Okay, how do you use how do you connect an image from CSS? Okay, let's jump in. So first thing is you target where you want to put the image. You want the image to be inside a card header. Okay, I just copy a card header class, come this side, I say dot card header, and inside the card header start putting our image. So how do we put an image? There are very many properties you can use here. The first one is simply background, just like that. You can use a background just like that, or another one is background image. So if you use background, simply put here URL. There's no big difference, one is new to the other, but they all work. So you put background and you put URL, and inside the URL then you indicate the path where the image is located, right? Okay, so we can just use background, or we can simply use background image, so they all work the same. one is background and one is background image. So you can use the same, and you can just simply use background for that case. Okay, so in this URL you simply put the path to the image. So now here the path, remember we are seated inside a CSS file or a style.css, and it is at a different level with where the image is seated. So we could not say dot slash. You can see it is telling you in this folder you have only style, so we have to move one step outside. Dot images and card header, like that, and you will see that actually our image does not show up. So the question is why? So if you inspect, we are going to see a lot of inspecting in these lectures we are going to be doing. We are going to be looking at inspecting. What is inspecting? If this is the first time to see this inspecting, let me first go back one step. Just right click and choose inspect. And inspecting, these ones are called developer tools, and we have a lot of tabs we use, but most especially right now in CSS, what we want is these elements. We are able to look at our elements in HTML, and then we are able to have this small icon here, helps you to select. I don't know if you can see this. This element here helps you to select an element, and you see select an element in the page to inspect it. So if you want to inspect something, you use this one. As well, you can look at all the elements, you see them here. So for instance, if I want a particular element and I don't know why it is not showing up, I would do this, and you can see this is our container, and inside the container we have a card, and inside the card is where we have a card header. So if I click on the card header and I scroll down, they will show me why it is not showing up. And if you look at this one, there is something like a box. This one we call it a box model. Now here it is showing you that actually this element is having a width of 300, but it is having a height of 0, right? It is having a height of 0. So if I go to this card, it is having a height of 0. And if you look at the CSS, scroll up here, it is having a height of 0, and you can actually see that our image is here, card header image. So if I came here, and by the way, you can even write code within the browser. So I could actually write height, and I give it a figure like 200 pixels, and with that our image shows up. Yeah, so this is how you start understanding that you are now acting like a developer. You ask yourself, why is something not working? Why is something not working? So you start testing up things like that. So what is actually making the image not show up? When you use CSS, it must have a height. Unlike in HTML, you don't need to give a height, but here you have to specify the height of an element. So that is a trick, and I've told you guys. And by the way, the code here does not stay. If I refresh the page, it is gone. So I can just come back this side, and I say I give it a height, and this one I just try like 100 pixels. Okay, and it's going to do that. So the first thing that happens, you see that the image is cut. Some part of the image we cannot see them, and that is a problem number one. So how do we avoid that problem, or how do we overcome that problem? So there's another property called background size, right? So give here a background size, and we have a lot we can give. There is contain, and then there is cover. You can try out, but I'm just going to put contain for now, and you see the image is back and it is full, right? Okay, so that is nice. Our image is fitting in very well, and we have used two properties. We have used background size and background, and in combination with the height. Please remember this syntax, and that's how it works. You have the element you want, then give it a background, that image, give it a height, and give the background size. Okay, So that is nice to achieve. The card is getting into shape. Now another thing we want to put our card is now that our card is centered. Our card is centered. Now centering is another big thing if we are to center things, but for now I'm just going to duplicate here a page. So I'm just going to remove all these ones. Now if I want to center something, let's start with a simple basics. We have two good ways of centering things. The first way is, so I have something like here. This is assuming this is our container we are having right now, and then we have another object that we have somewhere, and probably it's going to be seated somewhere like here. So I'm just going to give this one a field of maybe red. So you have this one is a container, this large piece here. I don't know if you guys can look at this properly. So we have a container like this. You have a container like this one. This is your container, and this is an element you are trying to center. So at this point it is maybe seated at a point like that. So the first way is, we are going to first explain what is margin. Now you can the first trick we use to center things is called margin. Okay, so what is margin in that case? Okay, so I'm just going to go to another slide. I explain for you margin in brief. So if I have very many objects like this, I can have many objects like that. Now the space between two objects, I want you to note this one clearly. This space clearly here, let me just make this one more visible and I give it a weight. Okay, so I can increase this so that it is more visible. Okay, so the space between two elements, guys, the space between two elements is what we call margin. So this space here, assuming I'm just going to put it up here, this space here you are seeing here is excuse me, the space you are seeing here is what we call margin. So this is what we call margin. This is a margin. So a margin is a space between two elements, right? So this element here, maybe this is 30 pixels or 100 pixels, whatever, but the distance between these and even here, this one is called margin. And don't forget about that one. So margin is between elements. And now another one that normally confuses is padding. Now padding is within an element. So I can just demonstrate that also by bringing another shape very quickly so that we overcome this as early as possible. So I don't know if you look at this object. Let me just zoom it in. So I'm just going to draw another one here, right? I can give it a slight another red like that. So this is like one object. Don't look at them as two objects. This is two objects, but within two objects you want things to be wrapped to be inside here. So if this is an object itself, and now within an object we want the space between, let me just get another arrow here. So the distance here, let me just change the weight. I don't know. Okay, let's make this one big. Instead, let's make it small. Okay, this is enough. So the distance between the border of this element to where the content starts. So this one is like content, like you have text, images, and everything. So the content starts from here at a distance, or it leaves some space. So this space within an element is called padding. So this space here is called padding, while the margin is between two elements. Padding is within that very element, but margin is between two elements. Now, what happens if you have only one element, like in this case? So we know margin. Margin, if for instance I said margin 50, and that case with margin, what you should understand is that margin takes for values, right? Margin takes for values. For instance, let's go back to code and we demonstrate this. So we have our card here. So if I put margin, for instance, margin left. Now the margin has things like margin has 4 figures. It has on margin left, we can specify maybe 20 pixels. And if I say only margin left 20 pixels, you'll see the card has been pushed from this wall 20 pixels. Okay. If I put another figure like margin top, and I also put maybe 30 pixels, you will see that the card is pushed from the top 30 pixels. If I go and I say margin right and I put 30 pixels, it might not be visible, but there is a 20 margin right here, but because there is a lot of space, it cannot be seen. And even bottom, you can give margin. Now in that case, what is very interesting is one thing. Now margin can be written as a shorthand, and you can write, for instance, margin 2 rem, or let's just say 20 pixels and 30 pixels. If you write margin as 2 figures like this, so it will be, if I write, just write a comment here. So if you write margin like this, so this first figure here, it represents margin top and bottom. This one is margin top and bottom. I can write down this one here. You're not going to understand it at once, but just follow. Even if you are not understanding it at this point, you just follow. So if I have margin, if I have margin 20 pixels, 30 pixels, now the first figure here, if I have it like this, now the first figure, this one, represents top and bottom. This one is top and bottom. Always remember that this is top and bottom. And then this other 30 pixels, it is right and left. Right and left. So you are trying to say that 20 pixels top and on top and bottom margin, and then 30 pixels left and right. So if you have this instance, you have only 2 figures, just to know the first figure is top and bottom, and then this one, the next figure, is left and right. So having said that, let's go back in VS Code. So there's one trick. So if I say margin top 0, so if I put 0 here, what it would do is that it is going to get top and bottom, it gives it 0, and then 30 pixels on both sides. So you see, it has left it on top here, but it has given it some spacing here. So the trick is, if it is only one element in the container and you want to balance it, so what I would just say, I would tell the browser, okay, you calculate for me the distance this side to be equal the distance this side. You see, if as we are increasing this one, if we increase this one maybe to 200, maybe 300 pixels, you see that we are trying to actually like center it, but we are not sure if it is fully centered, right? So what we do is that on this figure, the second figure here, we put the word auto. Now when you put the word auto, you are telling the browser, you calculate for me the same thing that is on the left, let it be on the right, and with that it puts it in the center. So guys, we have our card in the center, and we have used this trick called margin 0 auto. You're going to use people using this trick every other time. They use this trick to center a div or an object into the center and use the margin trick. Okay, so we have our object in the center. So let's continue very fast. So next we have it centered. Okay, we are moving at a good speed. I'm liking it, this guys. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe at this point, and such that you help me grow this channel, so that I give you more better content. So those who have subscribed, thank you so much, and those who have not subscribed, please subscribe, such that we continue to make this content. Okay, thank you for that. So here we have our card, and it is coming in shape. Now another thing I want to first show up is this. If you look at the card, the corners are somehow curved. If you look at these corners, they are somehow like curved, right? Okay, so the corners are curved. So how do we put a curve on the card? So that property is called border radius. Border radius, and you can test out with figures. So border radius, and you can see here, defines the radii of the outer border edge, and they give you the syntax here and other things. And we said if you don't understand, you can get more details by visiting MDN. So when you go to the MDN, they will demonstrate a lot of things that you can understand more and more. And you understand that if becoming a developer, you will have to read documentations, and it is one of the things that you'll be doing every other time. So right now I'm just going to save you a hassle. So but what they are trying to say, it also have 4 values. It takes in 4 values. Border top left, so it has, since a box or an object always have 4 corners. For instance, there is a corner here, there is a corner here, there is a corner here, a corner here. So this is top left, this is top right, this is bottom right, and this is bottom left. And those are the 4 corners you can target: border top left, border top right, border bottom right, and border bottom left. So those are the 4 corners you can target. But for now, simply put one value like 10 pixels. This one means that all sides you have set them to 10 pixels. And why I'm setting it to 10 pixels, or why I'm setting it to one value, is that you look at this is the same, here is the same, and on top it is the same, right? Okay, so I'll just put about 10 pixels, and we'll see how it works. Okay, so with 10 pixels, I think this is good enough. But the first problem we have is that this thing is flashing on top. We want some distance to be on top, and by the way, it is not margin. So if, for instance, we come and put here margin, it does not work. If I put, for instance, 30 pixels here, if I put 30 pixels, you realize it has created a white thing here on top. So this is not margin. Now this is a point where we apply padding. Okay, so I'm just going to take back this to 0, and then I'm just going to give it padding. So we had talked about padding, and we are going to get more of this as we are moving on, and we understand how this one works. Padding is within an element. So if I want to put some padding on top and bottom, so I'm just going to say, for instance, 30 pixels top and bottom, and 0 on left and right. And with that, it gives us that kind of thing. And if I remove this background red, it gives us something like that. Yeah, it sort of pushes it down. It sort of pushes it what? It sort of pushes it down like so. Okay, so that is also done. So the next thing we want is, so if you look now on our card, the image is not having the curved corners. the image is not having the curved corners, and the background for the card is white. So we can also first work on that one. We put the background color. So let's put the background color. So the background color of the card is white, so I can just say background color and specify white, like so. Okay, so we have our card like that. Now the first problem we have is this thing has come back, right? So we have to look for ways of pushing it down. Okay, and we might actually use margin. So let's first remove this padding. Okay, so we put it back on the top, and we look for ways of how we can push it down. So let's push it down. Let's push it down. So I'm just going to come here on this margin, and I will put back our 30 pixels like that. Now it pushes and creates a white background. That white background, I don't know why it is creating that white background. Okay, so to fix that, we could actually give this same color. We could give this same color to the body. So the body is the whole HTML. So let's first see if we give the body the same background color, if it fixes our problem. Yeah, so we give the whole body, the body is the, if you look back in HTML, body is this parent element. So we give it the same color as the container, such that we don't see that white background. Okay, so it has fixed somehow our problem. But on top here, if you look our image, it is not having the curve like here at the end. So okay, so the first thing we are going to do is let's put the curve. So what we do, we want on our image or on the top header, remember this is card header, here on the card header, we are going to give a border radius and the same border radius. So if I put the same border radius here, border radius 10, what it does, it applies on 4 corners. You can see it applies here, applies here, applies here, and applies here. But when you look at our card, we have only corners not applied here and here. We have the corner here and the corner here. And this is the top left. So this is the top left radius, and this is the top right radius. So instead of saying border radius, we give one figure. What I could say, border top left radius, and I give 10 pixels, and I go down and I say border top right radius 10 pixels, as that. Okay, and we have our corners. So we have this corner and we have this corner, but down here it is not. Okay, this is good so far. It is coming, our card is coming. Okay, so let's move at some good speed now. Okay, so we have the card coming up. So there is a space between here. As you can look at this one, there is a space. First of all things in the card are centered. All things in the card are centered. So how do we center all the text? So the easiest thing how we could center all this text is by going to the card. It's a simple trick. By going to the card and we say text align center. So this text align center, what it does, it gets all the text within the card and it makes sure it has been put in the in the center. Okay, and that one is done also. Now another thing we want to make sure is to reduce the font size of our heading. So if you look at the card right now, we are now on smaller components. If you look on the card, there is under the card body. If you look under the card body, what is the card body? somewhere here. Okay, this is the card body, I guess. Okay, so okay, I just look at this. So the card body, we have a lot of elements within the card body. Let me just reduce this. So we have this order summary. You can see there is a distance on top and bottom. So we can first go to the, so what we want right now is we want space, one space on this. On this there is space here down, so we could go to this card header and we give some margin. Okay, so just give some margin like 20 pixels. So on this card header, I want to give a small margin, and I just go on card header and I would say margin bottom, and I can just say 10 pixels, and we first check with that. Okay, it has put some space. Then I go on this one, order summary, and order summary we gave it a class, so I could target that class, which is card heading. Okay, so card heading, I could target it here. So first thing I'm just going to give it is padding also. So I'm just going to give it padding top and bottom. I'm going to give it 10 pixels, and on the other side I'm giving it 0 pixels. So this is top and bottom, and then this is on the sides. I don't want it to have anything on the sides like a padding, but I want it on top and bottom, and it produces something like that. So another thing, if you look at it, I think it is its color. So let's look at the color of this. So there is this dark bluish, and then the font size is also brought down. Okay, so where is our colors? So go to style guide, and we have a dark blue color. It is a bright blue, and then there is a dark blue. So I'm just going to copy this dark blue, and I'll go back to style, and then I just say color. So color is given by color, and paste that color. By the way, if your VS Code is not bringing this color, I'm using an extension called color highlight. So go to extensions and put color highlight. This is what it is called. It is called color highlight. So highlight, something like that. So I don't know if my internet is not working, but search for an extension called color highlight and make sure you have it installed. Okay, it is called color highlight. So it should be searching, you will see it popping up there. So give it a color like that. Let's go back to the, and you can see it is that color. So another thing that is missing is our font. I feel like the font is, we have the connected, the font is connected, and where are we using the font? We are not using it anywhere. So wherever, by the way, this is a common thing whereby you have connected the fonts and they are not working. So when, by the way, the color highlight is here, so make sure you install this, and then you'll be seeing your colors the way I'm seeing them. Okay, let me close that. So I was explaining, I don't know if you guys can see this properly. This to be, sorry if you have not been seeing, sorry for that. So this is, if you look at this, if you look at our font, though we have it connected, we connected it here in CSS, there is one thing we didn't do. There is nowhere we have said to use that font, right? So wherever you go to the fonts, if I go back here where we go to the fonts are here on red hat. So click there, and it takes you to where we got this font. Now if you have put the font, the most important thing you should remember, after you have connected, we have our fonts here. There is where you connect the font, where we use either the link or the CSS here at import. Make sure there is where down here they say CSS rules to specify families. So you must copy this. this rule where you are specifying that I want to use that font. So come to styles, and you could simply put it here to mean that you want everything to be in that font. So you can put that style, you can put under the body, they will all work, but make sure the font family you have specified it to red hat display, and with that it should change our look. Okay, yeah, so this is looking nice right now. So let's bring down, let's go here and we say font size, let's try 18 pixels of the card heading. That looks smaller. Let's try 20. Yeah, I think that one is fine. It looks fine to me. Okay, let's now do very fast. Okay, so we have our order summary and it is done. Okay, next let's look at another element. There is this text is having this kind of, that kind of color, some pale color there. Okay, so the first thing we can target that we have its class. The first thing you make sure you have its class, so it is called card text. So the first thing always to look at is the padding. So you first look at how is it having the space. So you can see it also has some space actually on top and even on bottom. So we could also give it some small space. So first thing, I always like giving it some padding. So card text, give it some padding. Maybe on top we could try also 10 pixels top and bottom, and write 0 pixels. We don't want any distance on the right, and that one looks fine. Okay, and then the color, go back to the style guide and let's look at the colors, if we can get a color to give to that stuff. Okay, I don't know if that color is pale, this desaturated blue. I don't know if that is the color. Let's try that one and see. So if we say color and we give that one, yeah, that one looks good. And then let's also bump down the font size. So the font size, let's make it 16 pixels. I think that one is 16 pixels. Let's make it 14. Yeah, that looks nice to me. Okay, that looks nice to me. Okay, so let's work on this annual plan. Okay, so when we look at the annual plan, that is where we have an icon that we did not put. So if you go back to the HTML, that is where we have the music icon and we don't put that icon. So we can simply put that icon as an image, and we say /images and it is music icon. Like that, it will come like so. Okay, so if you look at these things we have here, we have this one in this direction. Now by default elements have what we call display block. So what do I mean by display block? If for instance I went to price, there is this price heading. In fact, let's first go like to music icon. So if I get music icon or price and I give it a color, I want to first give it a color that I explain. So like music icon, if I give it a background color of red, you see the item is running from left to right, is occupying 100%, is occupying 100% of the parent element. Now this behavior is, we call that the display is block, or it is by default all the elements most of the elements are block level. So block level elements, they occupy 100% of the width by default. Even when you look at the annual plan, you look at all those things down here, the H and even the P tag, they all occupy 100%. That's why they are in this format. The one is on top, another one is down, another one is down. So how do we change this kind of behavior? So if we want to change that kind of behavior, we can come and we say, for instance, music icon, you look at this. If I gave it something like display, so we said by default they have display block. So here it won't change anything. But if I change this one to be inline block, look at that. Now it only occupies the space it is having, only that space that it is having. So let's do it to all these ones. If I go to like price, let's say if I give to price what it does, so dot price, if I give it a display inline block, what it will do, okay, so it does this, right? It does this, and then it has disorganized this. Okay, so now to make things clear, or to use, sorry for that, to have the easiest method, or the easiest method for centering elements or aligning elements that are block like these ones, there is one new method that we have in CSS that simplifies all these things. Okay, so the way we had put, for instance, this folder, this whole thing was called what? Card pricing. So if, for instance, I can come here on card pricing, and we give it inline block, this would try to sort some things, but I want to show you that it won't solve the problem. So the problem we have is called, the display we're going to use here is called flex. Now this is a new technique that has been brought, the one of display flex. Now I'm just going to be explaining it later. So what is display flex? That is the question. What is display flex? And by the way, we are having this question moving on here, and we could just simply solve this one. We could simply solve this problem. Let's first look at card pricing. Oh, wait guys, these buttons are not supposed to be in. These buttons are supposed to be outside. They are not inside. They are not inside the card. They are outside card pricing. They're not supposed to be inside the card pricing. They're supposed to be immediately outside the card pricing. That's why we are getting this weird problem going on. Okay. So, what is display flex? Now, I had explained already what the other display means. Now display flex is a big concept, but preliminarily what you should understand, it is used for laying out things. So what do I mean laying out things? So I'm just going to use this example here of the elements we have here. So you're assuming you have elements that are like this. Let me first delete some of these things. So whether you have things jumbled around like so. Now display flex has one thing. It assumes you have a container like this blue thing. It assumes you have a container, and in the container you have items, as we are having them here. This one can be divs, can be text, can be links, can be anything. But you have this container, and then you have some items. So the first thing, we always want to arrange items in certain ways. So for instance, we want, like, for instance, them to be like this. That is one way of arranging them, or you want simply to have them like this. So the only thing you should know about this prefix, it is a blood, but to understand it in simple terms, when you give this prefix, what it has done actually, it gets these items and put them in a row. So this prefix has two directions. So the first one is the direction facing this side, and that is the row, and then it has another one facing down. Like that. So it has two axes. It has the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. Now, by default, when you say this prefix to the container, by the this prefix you give it to the container. So when you give this prefix to the container, it gets the items inside and it arranges them in a row like this one. And then from there, you can now try to adjust the margin of these ones, and that is it. So for now, let's focus on that small piece, because flex can become complicated very easily. But let's just work on that. Let's say we give it this prefix, and with this prefix we get something like this. So the only thing we are missing is now giving them the margins, right? So let us give them margin, the margin, right, to separate these elements. And remember these ones here, I think we are missing one element. Are we? Let's first go back to the card. Okay, there is this change button. I don't know where it is lost from. Do we have, or we missed it? So under pricing, so down here we have a change button. Actually it can be a link, and we simply put a hash here, and then we put change. Sorry for that, guys. Yeah, something like that. So that we're having 3 elements. Okay, so another thing with flex that we can do is we can give justify content, and what we want to talk about right now is space between. So right now we have 2 things we have talked about. We have this prefix. So what about justify content? Justify content aligns flex items along the main axis of the current line of the flex container. What does that mean? What it does, it has done this. It gets all these elements and it distributes them equally along this horizontal lane. I don't want you to cram a lot of properties for flex. I'm just going to be talking about only one at a time, so that you don't confuse them. So justify content, space between, what it does, it arranges things from this end to this end. So what we could do, we could give some small padding to this, maybe top and bottom 0. Let me see, let's first look at it very well. Do we need some padding on the top? Let's look on our card here. Yeah, I think we need some padding on top and bottom, and then on the left and right. Okay, so we could just use padding to give some spacing now. So padding, top and bottom, let's give 10 pixels, and on right let's give maybe 20 pixels. Let's first look at how that one works. Okay, this one looks nice. It looks great already, right? So, and with that you can see we have already solved a big problem that we had, right? We had a big problem and it is almost solved. Okay, and the project, actually guys, we are taking it very fast, and then we can give the colors to these things. They have different colors. I think this one has the same color as the text, and then this one has a dark color. Okay, so let's do that. So to the card pricing, to this one, price tag, copy the class, go down here, dot that price tag, and give it a color, and the color we are giving it is this one, right? And that is looking great already. And then this annual plan on top is given another color. This is price heading. Copy that, come this side and give it a dark color. Please don't forget to put a dot. So give it another color, and this color we had used it on top here. Where is it? It is this color. Copy that, come down and give the color like that. Okay, so you can see we have the stuff coming on, and this link, it is looking, I think, good to me. Let's first look at it. Yeah, it looks like that, but maybe we change the font. We could reduce about the font, even these ones. Okay, so this one, let's just give font size. Font size maybe 14 pixels, and the link we can also give it here a class, and we could give it a link. So I could just come here and I say dot link. I could first of all font size, let's give font size 14 pixels, and we see if that one looks better. Yeah, I think that also looks much more better. So just work on the buttons. Okay, so the button, you can see how they are arranged. For them, they are not a display block by default, but we could give them something. So we have our two buttons. So first of all, let's work on them to look nice. Now we could first of all target like the payment. So I'm just going to work on something. I'm just going to give them one more class. By the way, an element can have many classes, so I'm just going to give them a class called BTN. This is going to be for both of them, and then a specific one like card BTN payment. It will be specific for this one, and this one is specific to this one, but they are all buttons, so we can have one class that they share some properties. So we can choose like the BTN class. So you said dot BTN, and the first thing we can first give them is padding. So you can just say maybe 10 pixels and 20 pixels. We see how that one works. That one looks huge to me. Maybe here we give 8 pixels. Yeah, that one looks more better, but they're still arranged like this. So if we want to put them down, we could give here display block, and we see if it can solve our problem. Yeah, so you can see display block makes it go this side. So we can now center them. We can now try to center them, and I don't think the margin 0 trick can work. We had this trick of margin 0 auto, but even me, I'm not sure if it can work, and it still works. It still works, guys. Margin 0. So what it does, it gives the same margin on the left and on the right, and it ended up putting it down like that. So top and bottom, we could give also top and bottom some margin, maybe 5 pixels or 10 pixels. Let's look at 10 pixels, how it works. Yeah, this looks good already. This looks good. And then we are going to end up putting them in sort of a div. Why I'm putting them in a div, I'm looking for where to put the padding on the bottom. So I would go to this and I put margin bottom specifically on this one. And I think not to avoid the complications, we can put more margin bottom on this, right? Instead of putting them in another div. So another thing I'm just going to do, I'm just going to remove the outline. So remove outline, say outline 0 or outline none, and that stroke that you're seeing there is called border. So we could give a border of also border none, and that would take the border out. Okay, now they are looking right now nice. Okay, so they are looking actually nice at this point. So let's work on individual buttons. So I would just now come here and I copy this card BTN payment, and put down here dot card BTN payment, and the first thing is work on the background color. Okay, so if you look at it, it has this color. So let's look for that color in the style guide. It is this bright blue. Copy that, Ctrl C, and inside here you say background color, paste it there, right? And if you check, okay, it is looking nice, guys. And then the color it is having inside, what is the color is it having? So the color is white. The color of the button is white. I'm looking at the button here, and it has curved corners. We said curved corners, we use what we call border radius. So what I'm just going to do is I come here and I say border radius, like we try 10 pixels and see if it is working. Yeah, that one looks nice. Maybe we could put it even at 6 pixels. Yeah, that is much more better. And then color, we could use white, right? Yeah, we could use white, and it looks much more better. And you can see the cancel button looks already looking great. So the only thing I'm just going to do on the cancel BTN, so first of all, go here and copy this class card cancel BTN dot cancel BTN. I'm just going to give it much more margin bottom. Let's try 20 pixels, right? So yeah, that is looking more great, as if it has not put that one. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to wrap all these buttons, solve the problem. Wrap all these two buttons into a div or into a section. So I would say now card buttons, a class like that, and I put my buttons. It doesn't change any classes so far, but the only thing you want from the card button, you want to put some space down. So I would come here and I give padding. So instead here, let me first target this class card button, and you could give it some bottom padding here, and you can see it adds the padding or the margin bottom. I think we just even give it padding. It is something like that. So padding 20 pixels, it would do something like that. Yeah, that one is much more better. Maybe just put it at 10. Yeah, that is much more better, looking nice already. Now I'm just going to show you one trick of hover. First of all, when you see our mouse, when we hover here, it doesn't show it is clickable. So if you want to make something look clickable, go back here where on our button and put cursor and set the cursor to be pointer. And with that, our buttons become with a finger like that. So if for something you want to be clickable, like you see here, this one is a link, and by default it has a clickable. It is clickable. But for buttons, you have to manually put this, right? So if you wanted to put a hover, like change the color of this button when you hover on it, we could do that. So when I want to put a hover, how do we put hover? Copy this class here, and you put a hover like so. A hover means when you bring the mouse onto that element, what happens? So want to slightly change the background color. Either we can make it more deep, we could use a deep color here, or a more pale color. We could use something like this, a more pale color. So on hover, we are changing a color to this one. So if I do that, you see that? Yes, that is how you change the hover. Like, that's how you put in a hover on elements. So guys, this is looking great. This is looking great, and I guess you have learned a lot of tons and stuff that you have learned in this project. This is for starters, and it is for learning and introducing us to many basics of CSS and HTML. There are better ways of doing this, but we are doing it in simple terms to make us learn CSS and HTML basics. So this one marks the end of our project 1, the order summary card. We have successfully finished it, and it is looking great if you ask me, right? So we are not going to do the responsiveness, but so far it is already looking great even on small devices. As I can say, you can see here it is small, but it is still looking great. But we are going to talk about more responsive in the next projects we are going to be doing. So with that, guys, please subscribe, and the code to all what we have done is going to be in the link in the description. Check in the description and you get all that code. If you missed anything or you didn't do anything, you will have a ton of stuff. Okay, so I'm just going also to put one exercise for you guys that I'm going to talk about in the next